You have been drinking coffee wrong every single morning. Not the coffee itself. The coffee is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The problem is what you are adding to it. And the more surprising truth is that the solution is not removing everything. It is adding the right things. Specific things in a specific order at a specific time. And the difference between doing this correctly and doing what most people do could show up in your body in ways that take years to understand, but only weeks to begin. Your morning coffee already contains a compound that most people have never heard of called chlorogenic acid. This is not a marketing ingredient. It is a naturally occurring polyphenol that your body uses as a biological signal. Specifically, it appears to interact with the systems that govern whether your stem cells stay in a resting state or mobilize into your bloodstream to begin repairing tissue. Most people think of stem cells as something discussed in medical research, but your body produces and circulates adult stem cells every single day. Their job is maintenance, quiet, continuous, invisible repair of blood vessels, organs, and tissues that experience microscopic damage as a normal part of daily life. The question is not whether your body has this capacity. It does. The question is whether what you drink every morning is supporting that capacity or blocking it before it can complete its work. Here is where the sabotage begins. When you add sweetened creamers, flavored syrups, or certain processed additives to your coffee, you trigger a sharp insulin response. Insulin in the morning is not neutral. It shifts your body into a storage and accumulation state rather than a repair and maintenance state. These two states are not compatible. Your biology cannot run both simultaneously at full capacity. So the chlorogenic acid that was beginning to activate your repair systems gets biochemically overridden by the insulin signal generated by the processed additive you just stirred in. The coffee did its job. You undid it in the same 30 seconds. There is a second system involved here that changes the conversation around weight management entirely. Most people understand fat as a single biological substance. It accumulates when you eat too much and shrinks when you eat less. That model is incomplete in a way that matters. Your body contains two functionally opposite types of fat. Tissue, white fat stores energy and accumulates in the familiar places. Brown fat does something completely different. It burns energy rather than storing it. Brown fat cells are densely packed with mitochondria and contain a specialized protein called UCP1 that disrupts the normal energy capture process and releases that energy as heat instead. When brown fat is activated, it is essentially running a continuous internal furnace that fuels itself primarily from stored white fat. Adults have meaningful brown fat deposits around the neck, collarbone, and spine. Whether those deposits are metabolically active or dormant depends almost entirely on the molecular signals they receive from what you consume. Before discussing what to add, it is worth being specific about what to remove first, because adding the right compounds to a cup that already contains the wrong ones produces diminished results at best. Commercial. Non-dairy creamers commonly contain hydrogenated oils and whitening agents that elevate inflammatory markers in the gut and suppress the bone marrow, signaling that governs stem cell release. Flavored syrups containing high fructose corn syrup and synthetic emulsifiers have been shown in research to disrupt the tight junction proteins that maintain gut lining integrity. When the gut lining is compromised, systemic inflammation rises and the biological signaling pathways you are trying to support become flooded with competing noise. And protein powders blended into hot coffee create a specific problem that most people would never anticipate. The artificial sweeteners commonly used in whey protein products produce breakdown compounds when heated. That research has linked to DNA strand disruption in gut cells. Remove these before adding anything else. The first compound worth adding is raw cacao powder, 1 teaspoon. Not cocoa, not hot chocolate mix. Raw cacao that is unroasted and minimally processed. The distinction is chemical rather than aesthetic. Commercial. Cocoa undergoes an alkalizing process that destroys a significant proportion of its flavonols, specifically epicatechin and procyanidin B2, which are the compounds responsible for its cardiovascular and cellular benefits. Raw cacao also contains a compound called phenylethylamine that your brain produces naturally during states of positive arousal. This compound has been shown to upregulate a chemokine called CXCL12 that directly governs the movement of stem cells from bone marrow storage into active circulation. Add it to the cup before pouring the coffee so the hot liquid disperses it evenly. Start with half a teaspoon if the flavor is unfamiliar and build from there. The second compound is Ceylon cinnamon, and the distinction here carries a health implication that most people are completely unaware of. The cinnamon in most kitchen spice racks is almost certainly cassia cinnamon, a different botanical species that contains a compound called coumarin at concentrations that European food safety authorities have identified as concerning for liver health when consumed daily at the doses used in metabolic health supplementation. Ceylon cinnamon, labeled as true cinnamon or cinnamomum verum, contains coumarin at levels approximately 250 times lower. At a metabolic level, it contains a polymer that functions similarly to insulin at the cellular receptor, activating glucose transporters in muscle tissue without requiring a pancreatic insulin spike. This directly addresses the insulin-driven fat storage cycle. Research from the Karolinska Institute, tracking 1 gram of Ceylon cinnamon daily for 8 weeks, found measurable reductions in fasting blood glucose and decreases in visceral fat independent of caloric intake changes. 1/4 teaspoon in your morning coffee is within the range studied and integrates naturally with the flavor of cacao. Cardamom is the third compound and the one most likely to surprise people who think of it purely as a culinary spice. It contains 2 volatile compounds that have been shown to activate the beta-3 adrenergic receptor on brown fat cells. That receptor is the molecular switch that triggers UCP1, the thermogenic protein that puts brown fat into active calorie burning mode. Pharmaceutical companies have invested substantially in developing synthetic drugs that activate the same receptor. Cardamom does it through natural compounds at culinary doses and without the heart rate elevation associated with synthetic beta-3 agonists. 1/8 of a teaspoon of freshly ground cardamom is sufficient. Grind whole pods rather than using pre-ground powder because the volatile compounds responsible for the thermogenic effect degrade relatively quickly after grinding. Lion's mane mushroom extract is the 4th edition and the most scientifically underappreciated one on this list. It contains 2 compound families found in no other food source that have demonstrated the rare property of crossing the blood-brain barrier. Once across, they stimulate the synthesis of nerve growth factor, a molecular signal that governs how neural stem cells differentiate into functional neurons. As we age, nerve growth factor production declines, and this decline is considered one of the upstream mechanisms behind reduced cognitive resilience and neuroplasticity. Separately, nerve growth factor communicates with the hypothalamus in ways that increase sympathetic nervous system tone directed at peripheral fat tissue, enhancing fat mobilization and thermogenic activity. Half a teaspoon of dual extracted lion's mane powder, meaning extracted with both hot water and alcohol to capture all active compound families, dissolves almost completely in coffee, with a flavor mild enough to disappear behind the cacao and cinnamon. The 5th edition is C8 MCT oil, and the specificity of C8 versus general MCT oil matters more than most product labels make clear. C8. Caprylic acid converts into ketone, bodies in the liver at a rate 3 to 4 times faster than C10. Those ketones are not simply an alternative brain fuel. They function as epigenetic, signaling molecules that inhibit enzymes responsible for suppressing longevity gene expression. A morning dose produces a measurable ketone. Rise within 30 to 45 minutes without disrupting the overnight fast in a metabolically counterproductive way. That ketone signal activates a cellular energy sensor called AMPK, which research published in Cell Metabolism has shown increases circulating stem cell counts in peripheral blood by improving the directional signal those cells use to navigate toward sites of tissue damage. Begin with half a teaspoon and build gradually over 3 to 4 weeks. Add it after brewing and blend briefly. Unblended MCT oil, floating on the surface of coffee, absorbs less efficiently than a properly emulsified preparation. 2 preparation details determine whether any of this works as the research suggests it can. Coffee, brewed between 195 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit, achieves optimal chlorogenic acid extraction. Above, that range phenolic compounds begin degrading before they reach your cup, and dairy milk binds to the flavonols in raw cacao through a protein complexation process that reduces their absorption by up to 55%, according to studies measuring compounds in the bloodstream. If a creamy texture matters, unsweetened. Oat or almond milk does not contain the proteins that cause this binding effect. Your body is not waiting to be fixed. It is already running repair systems, maintenance cycles, and cellular cleanup processes every single day. Without your awareness, what the compounds described here appear to do, according to the most consistent available evidence, is work with those systems rather than against them. That is not a dramatic transformation. It is a daily recalibration that compounds quietly across weeks and months. The cup you drink every morning is already part of your biology. The only question is which direction you are pointing it. Subscribe for more evidence-based content on how daily habits interact with your biology in ways that matter more than most people realize.